Hi everyone, my name is Anna Daniels, and my favorite work that we read this semester is Frost at Midnight by Samuel Taylor Coleridge. I think it's really important to understand the background of this poem. Whenever Coleridge grew up, he grew up in London during the Industrial Revolution, and at that point, London was moving from an agriculture economy to an industrial economy, which meant that people were moving from working inside their homes and on farms and plantations and moving out towards factories and into the city. And at that point in time, London's population more than doubled. And so I just think of how this small town, not relatively small town, was just introduced to a population surge. And so that should really be taken into account of the living standards that he was forced to live through during that time period and in that city specifically. Moving on into a summary and analysis of Frost at Midnight, the speaker of the poem, who a lot of people assume to be Coleridge, is speaking to his infant son while he's sleeping right next to him, and everybody else in the lodge cabin is also asleep. And I think an important thing that Coleridge is emphasizing is the silence. And coming from a city as busy and as overpopulated, like we said, as London, silence is probably precious to those people, because if you've ever been to a big city like New York or Mexico City, you know that it is not quiet. It is almost never quiet. And so a good chunk of his poem is just taking advantage of that quietness and just loving every single second of it. And he wishes for his child to have a better childhood than he experienced in that crowded, unsanitary city. And, you know, the country versus the city at that point, the country is where you can really just be free and be a child and not have to have those pressures and be put into those adult work situations that children were being put into. Coleridge is saying that if his child were to grow up in the country, his childhood would be significantly more beautiful, and nature itself would be so sweet no matter what the season is. And I think that Coleridge is really just appreciating his time and hoping that his child can begin to understand just the beauty and the amazingness that is in nature. I chose this poem because I think it's really easy to read and it's easily understandable, and I think in British literature that can be hard to find in poems. Having grown up in a city and myself, I understand the busyness and the overpopulation, and I understand how suffering it is. If you've ever driven south on I-35 going towards Austin, you know that Austin and the roads around it were not built for these many people coming into it. And so I kind of understand how he feels. And I also understand whenever we go out into the country or out to our family's ranch house, I understand taking advantage of that quietness and that peacefulness. And so that is why I picked this poem.